The galaxy was a busy, chatty place. Ships from a dozen different species moved along the agreed-upon routes, their engines glowing in the dark. They traded, they talked, they explored together under the rules of the Galactic Concord. It was mostly peaceful. Near the edge of Concord space was a quiet area. The star charts marked it as Human Administrative Zone 7. To the Concord, it was a blank spot. The humans had joined the Concord many cycles ago, but they kept to themselves. They traded some basic goods, shared some harmless cultural data, but they never invited anyone in. Their border was just a line on a map with a simple repeating message. No entry, unauthorized transit prohibited. Most Concord captains thought it was a formality. A quirk of a shy species. The GCS Curiosity was a good ship. Its crew was a mix of species, all chosen for their skill. Captain Lissa, a Kavani with smooth blue skin and calm eyes, commanded from her chair. Her first officer, a tall Drellian named Tay, handled communications and diplomacy. At the sensor station sat Min, a young human man. He was quiet, competent, and well-liked. Tay considered him a friend, even if Min was sometimes hard to read. Their current mission was to map a strange, glowing nebula that brushed against the human border. The nebula was beautiful, swirling with colors no one could name. It was also unstable. Captain Lissa had ordered caution. Min watched his screens. The data from the nebula was strange. Gravity waves pulsed in odd rhythms. He opened his mouth to report a small anomaly when the ship shuddered. It was not a violent shake, but a deep, groaning sound that came from the hull itself. "Report," Captain Lissa said, her voice steady. "The nebula's gravitic field just spiked," Min said, his fingers flying over his console. "It's creating a shear effect. It's pulling on our port side." The main lights flickered. A warning alarm blared once before Tay silenced it. On the main viewer, the colorful gas seemed to reach for them with lazy, magnetic fingers. "Engineering, full power to the main drive." "Get us out of this pull," Lissa ordered. The engine's hum grew louder, straining. For a moment, it seemed to work. The ship began to turn away from the glowing cloud. Then, a sound like a great metal cable snapping echoed through the ship. The main drive went silent. The Curiosity was suddenly adrift, caught in the nebula's slow, powerful current. "Primary drive is offline," the engineering officer said, his voice tight. "Emergency systems are active, but we have no thrust. We are drifting." Captain Lissa studied her navigation screen. The current was pulling them steadily, not toward the dangerous heart of the nebula, but sideways. Her eyes tracked the line of their drift. It led directly to the human border, the one marked "No Entry." "Can we get the maneuvering thrusters online? Enough to change our angle?" she asked. "Negative, Captain. The gravitic shear is too strong. They're useless." The ship drifted in silence for several minutes. Everyone watched the navigation map. The dotted line representing their path inched closer and closer to the human border. The simple red no-entry warning flashed on the screen. Tay shifted in his seat. "Captain, the human border. Their warnings are ... firm." "I am aware, Tay," Lissa said. She was thinking. The human rules were not Concord laws. They were a request. A strong request, but still just a request. Her ship was in danger. On the other side of that line, the space was calm and empty, according to old scans. Perfect space to make repairs. To her, it was a simple calculation. Save the ship and the crew, or obey a sign put up by a reclusive species. The choice was clear. Helm, when we cross the line, try to use the residual momentum to push us into a stable orbit around that small moonlet. It's just inside their space. We will make our repairs there and leave immediately. We will send a formal apology after we are safe. Min, at his sensor station, went very still. He did not turn around, but his shoulders tensed. Captain, perhaps we should attempt a distress call to the humans first, Tay suggested, glancing at Min's rigid back. There is no time for a bureaucratic delay, Tay. This is an emergency. The humans are reasonable. They will understand. Min slowly turned his chair. His face, usually so calm, was pale. Captain, I must advise against crossing. The protocols are ... absolute. Lissa looked at him. She saw his fear, but she mistook it. She thought he feared breaking his people's rules and getting in trouble. She gave him a reassuring nod. Your concern is noted, Officer Min, but my duty is to this ship. We are crossing. Min turned back to his station. He said nothing more. His hands moved under his console, out of sight. He pressed a small hidden panel on the underside. A tiny light, visible only to him, glowed green on the edge of his screen. A signal had been sent. The Curiosity drifted. The border line on the map flashed. Then they crossed it. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. The ship continued to drift in silence. Captain Lissa let out a slow breath. See? All this worry for nothing. Helm prepared to every screen on the bridge that showed the outside world turned black. Not static, not snow. Pure, empty black. The main viewer was a dark window. The sensor screens read 0. No stars, no nebula, no moonlit. It was as if the universe outside the hull had been erased. Systems failure. Reboot sensors. Lissa commanded. Her calm-breaking Tay worked his console. Communications are dead. No incoming or outgoing signals. Long range, short range, even the emergency band. It's all ... gone. Internal systems are functioning at 100%, Min reported. His voice was flat, eerily calm. Life support, gravity, internal lights. All nominal. Only external perception and communication are offline. How is that possible? Lissa stood up, staring at the black viewer. A targeted dampening field of that power. It's unheard of. Tay looked at Min. Min was just sitting at his station, watching his blank screens. He wasn't frantically working. He wasn't scared. He was just ... waiting. A cold feeling settled in Tay's stomach. Min, Tay said softly. What is this? Min finally looked at him. There was no anger in his eyes. No panic. There was something else. It looked like pity. They know we are here, Min said simply. Who? Your people? Tell them it was an accident. It doesn't matter, Min said, turning back to his dark screen. The protocol has started. On the bridge, surrounded by the silent, empty blackness of the void they had entered, the crew of the Curiosity felt a new kind of fear. It wasn't the fear of an explosion or a crash. It was the fear of being swallowed whole by a silence that had been waiting for them all along. The human border wasn't a line on a map. It was the edge of a cage, and they had just flown inside. The silence was the worst part. On the bridge of the GCS Curiosity, the only sounds were the hum of the life support and the quick, shallow breaths of the crew. The main viewer showed nothing but a perfect, endless black. It was not the black of space, dotted with stars. It was the black of a closed door. Avoid. Captain Lissa fought to keep her voice steady. Engineering, I want a full diagnostic on all external systems. Focus on communications first. This has to be some kind of localized interference from the nebula. The chief engineer's voice came back, thick with confusion. Captain, there's no interference pattern. It's not static or jamming. The systems are ... dead. They are receiving no input at all. It's like the antennas and sensors don't exist anymore. A cold knot tightened in Lissa's stomach. She looked at her navigation screen. It was frozen, showing their last known position just inside the human border. The clock was still ticking, a tiny, mocking measure of time passing in this nothingness. Options, she said. More to herself than anyone. Date, the Drellian first officer, was running through protocols. Without sensors or comms, we are blind. We cannot even send a distress call back to Concord space. The emergency beacons are non-responsive. Our only option is to attempt a blind jump to hyperspace, but with no navigational data, that is suicide. Lissa pressed her fingertips to her forehead. This was impossible. Technology did not work this way. A dampening field powerful enough to silence a ship completely would require immense power, a massive generator. They had seen nothing. No station, no ships, no energy signatures. It was as if the void itself had swallowed their signals. Her eyes landed on Min. The human sensor officer was sitting perfectly still at his post. His screens were as black as everyone else's, but he was not trying to fix them. He was just waiting. A spark of frustration cut through Lissa's fear. "Officer Min," she said, her tone sharp, "your people are responsible for this. You will attempt to make contact. Use any method. A coded pulse, a tight beam on a human frequency, anything. Explain this is an accident and we require assistance." Min turned to look at her. His face was calm, but his eyes held that same strange look from before. It wasn't fear. It was resignation. They already know everything, Captain. Making a transmission now would be against procedure. Procedure? Lissa snapped. Your procedure is crippling a Concord vessel. Do your duty to this ship and make contact. Min held her gaze for a long moment. Then he gave a small, slow nod. Yes, Captain. He turned back to his console. His hands moved, but not toward the communication panel. Instead, he tapped a series of commands on a secondary screen that was meant for system diagnostics. He entered a long, complex code. A small, green icon shaped like a lock appeared in the corner of the screen for a second, then vanished. To Captain Lissa and the others, it looked like he was working. He was not in a small, dimly lit room deep within a sterile asteroid facility in human space. A soft chime sounded. A woman named Yuna looked up from her own screen. She was in her late 20s, with a serious, focused expression. Her station was one of hundreds in the quiet room. Data streams flowed silently. Her screen showed a simple schematic of the GCS Curiosity, hovering just inside the borderline. A log entry popped up. Asset M7 activated. Vessel contained. Awaiting instruction. Yuna's fingers danced across her console. She opened a secure, encrypted channel. The connection was not radio-based. It used a principle of physics the Concord did not understand, a kind of quantum entanglement that worked instantly across any distance, and was utterly unintercepted. IBLE. In Min's ear, a voice spoke. It was clear and calm, with no background noise. It was Yuna. Report, Asset M7. Min subvocalized, his lips barely moving. Unauthorized Concord vessel, Class 3 Explorer, has crossed line Sigma. Cause appears to be legitimate mechanical failure from nebulous shear. Crew complement of 18 mixed species. No observed hostile intent. They are blind and deaf. Awaiting instruction. On the bridge, Tay was watching Min. He saw the man's stillness, the slight tension in his jaw. He wasn't speaking into a mic. He was just sitting there. A terrible suspicion took root in Tay's mind. Yuna's voice was cool and professional in Min's ear. Containment is holding. Proceed with standard sanitization protocol. Psychological conditioning package Calm Waters is pre-authorized. You are to observe and maintain cover unless your safety is compromised. A cleanup team is being prepared. Understood, Min vocalized. The first officer is suspicious. Noted. Proceed. The connection ended. Min took a slow, quiet breath. He felt a familiar hollow feeling in his chest. He liked Tay. He liked this crew. But he had a job. He had sworn an oath to protect something far bigger than one ship. He turned in his chair to face Captain Lissa. Captain, I have attempted contact on all known human emergency channels. There is no response. The interference field is blocking all outgoing signals. Lissa slumped back in her chair. The last thread of hope snapped. How long can they keep us here? We have supplies, but... She didn't finish the sentence. The question hung in the air. Asterisk, what do they want? Asterisk suddenly, the main lights on the bridge brightened slightly, shifting from a neutral white to a softer, warmer yellow. The change was small, but in the tense silence, it was jarring. What was that? Lissa asked. Environmental systems adjusted the lighting, an officer reported, confused. I did not command it. Then, the ship's AI voice spoke. It had always been a neutral, synthetic male voice. Now, it was a different voice. It was a woman's voice. It was gentle, soothing, and warm. It was the voice of a specialist named June, though they would never know her name. Welcome, the new voice said, filling the bridge. Please do not be alarmed. You are in a secure location. You are safe. For your comfort, the ambient environment is being optimized. Tay felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. Who are you? Identify yourself. The voice continued, ignoring him completely. It was not a conversation. It was an announcement. Captain Lissa of the Kavani, your vital signs show elevated stress. Please remember your breathing exercises from the academy. They will help. Lissa's blood ran cold. How did it know her species? How did it know about the academy breathing exercises? The voice moved on. Officer Tay of the Drellian, your concern for your crewmate Min is noted. It is a commendable quality. Tay stared at Min, his eyes wide with horror. Min looked back, his expression unreadable. The voice had just confirmed his worst fear. They were not just trapped. They were being observed, analyzed down to their private thoughts and fears. The warm light, the gentle voice explaining they were safe, it was all wrong. It was the opposite of comforting. It was a violation. It was a parent talking to a frightened child. But the parent was a stranger who had locked them in a dark room. The soft voice of June kept speaking, offering pointless reassurance, naming names, referencing personal details no alien system should have. It was a psychological attack disguised as care. The crew sat in their chairs, trapped in the warm, yellow light and the gentle, horrifying voice, realizing the truth. This wasn't an arrest. It wasn't a military action. It was a procedure. They were not prisoners of war. They were specimens. And the humans had just begun the process of sanitizing them. The soothing voice from the ship's speakers finally stopped. The warm, yellow light remained. The silence that followed was worse. It was a listening silence. On the bridge, no one moved. They were all caught in the horror of what had just happened. The voice had known them. It had spoken to their private fears. It was like being touched by an invisible hand. Captain Lissa was the first to break the spell. She stood up, her movements stiff. Engineering. I want a physical team to check the external sensor arrays. Go out there in suits and see what is blocking us. Now. The order was a reflex. A captain had to act. But even as she gave it, she felt its uselessness. If the humans could hijack their AI and change their lights, a spacewalk would change nothing. Tay did not hear the order. He was staring at Min. Min was looking at his blank screens, his face a calm mask. The voice had used Tay's private worry about Min. That meant they were listening. They were watching. Right now. The feeling of being a bug under a glass was overwhelming. Mean, Tay said. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the quiet bridge. Look at me. Slowly, Min turned his chair. His expression was polite, attentive. It was the same look he had when taking a routine report. There was no fear, no guilt, just that terrible, patient calm. What is happening? Tay asked. He didn't shout. He just needed to know. What is sanitization? A flicker in Min's eyes. Just a flicker. He had not expected Tay to remember that word from his subvocalized report. The mistake was small, but it was there. Min's mask slipped for a fraction of a second, and Tay saw the truth in his eyes. This was a script. Min was following a script. The ship is being made safe, Min said, repeating the phrase from before. His voice was empty. Safe for who? Tay pressed, rising from his chair. For us or for them? Before Min could answer, the bridge doors hissed open. 2 engineering crew, a female Kivani and a male Rule, stepped out. They wore standard pressure suits, but their helmets were tucked under their arms. Their faces were pale. Captain, the Kivani engineer said, her voice shaking. We cannot open the outer airlock hatch. What do you mean you cannot open it? The manual override does not work. The control panel is dead. The hatch itself, it does not recognize any command. It is as if it is no longer an airlock, but just a solid piece of the wall. A deep, low hum vibrated through the deck plates. It was not the engine. It was a new sound, a feeling more than a sound. It pressed against their ears. At the same time, the gentle yellow light began to pulse slowly, like a heartbeat. Throb. Darkness. Throb. Light. Several crew members groaned, putting their hands to their heads. A wave of dizziness washed over the bridge. It was not enough to make them sick, just enough to make the world feel unsteady. Wrong Dot, the comforting female voice returned. Please be calm. You are experiencing temporary environmental adjustment. This is normal. It will pass. Focus on your breathing. Stop it. Lissa yelled at the ceiling. Show yourselves. We are a Concord vessel. This is an act of war. The voice ignored her. The pulsing light and the low hum continued. The dizziness persisted. In the corridor outside the bridge, Tay finally moved. He walked toward Min, who was still sitting at his station. The crew around them were distracted, clutching their chairs, disoriented by the throbbing light and sound. Tay grabbed the back of Min's chair and turned it, forcing the human to face him fully. He leaned in close, his voice a furious whisper. They are hurting us, Min, not with weapons. They are scrambling our minds, making us dizzy, playing with our lights. This is a procedure to you? This is what your people do to guests? Min looked up at him. In the pulsing light, his face looked ghostly. For the first time, Tay saw something real in Min's eyes. It was not anger or fear. It was a deep, weary sadness. The pity was back, but now it was mixed with a painful honesty. They are not hurting you, Min whispered back, the hum almost swallowing his words. They are cleaning you. If this was a hostile incursion, you would not be dizzy. You would be dead. You would never have even known you were dead. He glanced toward Captain Lissa, who was arguing with a flickering systems display. They think this is scary. They have no idea what scary is. This is just standard. This is the gentle way. Tay's anger froze. The words were more terrifying than any threat. The gentle way. And you? Tay asked, his voice cracking. What are you, a spy? I am a precaution, Min said softly, placed on ships that work near the border. To observe, to report, to help with the cleanup if needed. He looked at Tay's horrified face. I am sorry, Tay. I liked serving with you. But you crossed the line. No one crosses the line. The pulsing stopped. The lights stabilized, but they were now a cooler bluish-white. The dizzy feeling lifted, leaving behind a strange, empty-headed fatigue. The voice spoke again, sweet and clear. The adjustment period is complete. Your environment is now stable. You may experience some fatigue. This is a normal side effect. Please rest. Captain Lissa was yelling for a systems check. The engineers were reporting that the airlock was still sealed shut. The crew moved sluggishly, as if dreaming. Tay stepped back from Min. A friendship was gone, burned away. What stood before him was not his crewmate. It was a tool of the silence outside. He felt a crushing loneliness. He was surrounded by his crew, but they were all lost in the same bad dream. Only Min was awake, and he was on the other side. Tay understood now. This was not a battle. A battle had two sides fighting. This was a process. They were not enemies. They were a problem to be solved, a stain to be wiped clean. The humans were not monsters. They were janitors, and their cleaning tools were light and sound, and a voice that knew your deepest secrets. The fear changed shape inside Tay. It was no longer a sharp, screaming terror. It was a cold, heavy certainty. They were going to be sanitized, whatever that meant. And then he knew with a chill that reached his bones, they would be sent back. They would be returned to the Concord like a lost item, cleaned of any useful information, their memories scrubbed away. They would be empty shells, proof of a kindness that was crueler than any attack. He looked at Min one last time. Min gave him a small, almost imperceptible nod. It was an apology. It was a goodbye. Then Min turned back to his dead screens, a sentinel waiting for the process to finish. The human was the most frightening thing on this ship, because he was not afraid at all. He was home. The bluish-white lights stayed on. The strange, gentle voice did not speak again. An unnatural quiet settled over the GCS curiosity. It was not a peaceful quiet. It was the quiet of a hospital room in the middle of the night. The crew moved slowly, their thoughts fuzzy. They performed their checks and spoke in low tones, but the fight had gone out of them. The constant, unseen pressure had worn them down. Time became hard to follow. Without external sensors, they could not measure the passing of stars or planets. The ship's internal clock ticked on, but it felt meaningless. Had it been hours? A full day? No one could say for sure. Min remained at his station. He did not sleep. He would close his eyes for short periods, but he was always alert. He was waiting. The others gave him a wide space. They did not look at him. He was no longer one of them. He was a thing left behind by the silence outside. Captain Lissa finally gave up trying to command the void. She sat in her chair, her eyes fixed on the black viewer. Her mind worked in circles. What were the humans waiting for? A ransom? A negotiation? But no one ever came to talk. That was the most frightening part. There was no one to talk to. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, it ended. The main viewer flickered. Stars snapped into view, sharp and clear. The nebula glowed in the distance. Sensor data scrolled down Min's screens: temperature, radiation, local gravity. Everything was normal. The ship's communication console chimed with a backlog of automated status pings from Concord relay stations. The crew froze, afraid to believe it. Report, Lissa said, her voice hoarse. External sensors are back online. An officer cried out. I'm picking up the Concorde navigation beacon. We are just outside the human border. We're in Concorde space. A cheer started, but it died quickly. It was too easy. They had been in a dark room, and now the door was simply open. No explanation. No warning. Tay rushed to the navigation console. The helm is responsive. Thrusters are answering. The main drive is still offline, but we have movement. Then get us away from here, Lissa ordered. Slow and steady. Put distance between us and that border. The Curiosity turned, its maneuvering thrusters pushing it gently away from the invisible line. Behind them, human space looked empty and peaceful. It gave no sign of what had happened. As they moved, the crew began to check each other. They were all physically fine. No wounds, no marks. But a deep exhaustion clung to them. And their memories of the time inside the border were slippery. They could remember the blackness. They could remember the voice. They could remember the fear. But the order of events was jumbled. How long had they been in there? What had the voice said exactly? The details were fading like a dream after waking. Everyone except Tay. He remembered. He remembered Mean's words with perfect, painful clarity. Asterisk the gentle way. You crossed the line. Asterisk the ship sent out a distress call. Within hours, a Concorde medical frigate arrived. The crew of the Curiosity was taken aboard. Doctors scanned them. They found no physical trauma, no foreign chemicals in their blood. Their brains showed normal activity, but deep psych scans, the kind that map memory patterns, told a different story. In every single crew member, there was a gap, a smooth, clean, identical blank spot where the memories of their captivity should have been. It was not damage. It was not a natural forgetting. It was a precise, surgical removal. Only Tay's scan was different. The gap was there, but it was ragged at the edges. Fragments remained. A pitying look. A whispered apology. The feeling of being processed. The news raced through the Concorde. A science vessel had been captured by the humans and returned with its crew's memories erased. It was an act of unbelievable aggression, and an act of unbelievable technological superiority. Panic and anger spread among the member species. The Concorde High Council convened an emergency session. The chamber was a vast circle, with representatives of a dozen different species gathered. Holograms of the medical scans hung in the air. The mood was furious and fearful. Captain Lissa and Tay were brought before them to testify. Lissa spoke of the nebula, the failure, the crossing. She spoke of the blackness and the voice. But her testimony was full of holes. She would stop, frown, and say, I cannot recall exactly what happened next. It was frustrating to hear. Then Tay spoke. He told them what he remembered. Min's calm. The concept of sanitization. The idea that this was not an attack, but a routine procedure. The chamber listened in stunned silence. They made us feel like we were not enemies. Tay finished, his voice tired. They made us feel like we were. A mess that needed to be cleaned up. And then they cleaned us. The High Council was outraged. They demanded answers. They summoned the human ambassador. Ambassador John arrived alone. He was a middle-aged man with a pleasant face and a calm smile. He wore simple human clothes. He looked like a friendly administrator. He stood in the center of the great chamber, surrounded by the angry, fearful faces of the galaxy. The lead counselor, an elder Drellian, presented the evidence. The damaged ship, the erased memories, the psychological trauma. His voice trembled with indignation. This is a violation of every Concorde agreement, an act of piracy and psychological warfare. How does humanity explain this? John listened politely, his hands clasped behind his back. When the counselor finished, the chamber was silent, waiting for the excuse, the apology, the threat. Shun's smile never wavered. He nodded gently. "Thank you for the report," he said, his voice mild and clear. "We are glad the vessel and its crew were recovered safely. The GCS Curiosity experienced a mechanical failure and drifted into restricted human space. It was secured, stabilized, and returned to Concord territory. No lives were lost. No technology was appropriated. The incident is concluded." The silence that followed was absolute. It was more profound than the silence inside the border. Concluded? The Drellian counselor sputtered. "You violated the minds of 18 beings." Chun's expression became one of polite confusion. "Violated? Counselor, we prevented a potential crisis. An unauthorized vessel, carrying who knows what biological or data contaminants, entered a secured zone. We neutralized the risk. We returned the property. The method is a human internal security matter. The outcome is that the Concorde has its ship and its people back unharmed." He tilted his head slightly. "Would you have preferred we let them drift into the path of a human civilian shipping lane? Or that we had destroyed the vessel to protect our security? We chose the most peaceful option available to us." His words were like ice water. He was not defending an action. He was describing a clerical task that was now closed. The horror was not in his words, but in his tone. It was utterly reasonable. It was utterly final. The galaxy's leaders looked at Chun's calm, smiling face and understood. They were not dealing with a rival nation. They were dealing with a force of nature. Humanity's border was not a political line. It was a law of physics. Cross it, and you would be processed by a system that saw you as a problem, not a person. And then you would be sent back, empty, as a receipt. The meeting ended without any resolution. There were no sanctions to impose, no demands to make. What could they demand? The humans had already given back everything they took. Everything except the memories. And to Ambassador June, those memories were not a right. They were a contaminant dot as Jun left the chamber. The fear settled over the Concorde. It was a new kind of fear. It was the fear of a child who has just watched a parent calmly, methodically, clean up a broken toy, not with anger, but with a quiet, terrifying efficiency. The toy was still there, but it was not the same, and the child now knew, deep down, that some lines are not meant to be crossed. Ever. The fear did not fade. It grew. It spread through the Concorde like a cold virus. The story of the curiosity was told on news channels and in government briefings. The official human response, delivered by the ever-calm Ambassador Jun, was a masterpiece of quiet terror. They had broken no laws. They had returned the ship. The incident was closed, but the questions hung in the air, poisoning every thought about humanity. How had they done it? Why was their response so smooth, so practiced? What did sanitization really mean? A week after the hearing, a data packet appeared. It did not come through official channels. It was found in the private, encrypted network of a Concorde intelligence analyst, a place no outsider should have been able to touch. It was a snippet of raw audio, tagged with human symbols. A security code was attached, a code that matched the one used by the human asset, known as M-7-min. It was a gift. Or a warning. The Concorde Security Council listened to it in a shielded room. The audio was clean, with a slight echo of a large space. A woman's voice, young and professional, spoke first. Una, HAZ7 border log. Follow-up. Curiosity incident is filed. Standard sanitization run. The psychological package worked within expected parameters. The crew is clean. No latent triggers detected. A second woman's voice, lighter, almost bored, replied. Hannah, Another one? That's the third this cycle. Don't these Concorde pilots look at their maps? The no-entry signs are not decorative. They think they are. Their understanding of security is quaint. They think in terms of warships and warning shots. They don't understand a sealed environment. Hannah. Well, it was a boring one. No fun toys on board. No interesting tech to scan. Just a bunch of scared scientists. I cleared the calm waters voice pack from the system. June's voice is so soothing it gives me a headache. A soft chuckle. Be nice. It's efficient. It keeps them docile. Better than the alternative. Hannah. I know. The gentle way. Still, the boring ones make the shift drag. The interesting ones are the ones that mean to trespass. The smugglers, the spies, the ones with modified drives trying to slip through the sensor ghosts. Those we get to study. Those are fun. A pause, the sound of fingers on a keyboard. Fun is not the objective. Data is the objective. But yes, the intentional breaches are more informative. This one was just housekeeping. File it and forget it. Hannah. Filed. And forgotten. Log ends. The audio stopped. The room was silent. The council members, a collection of different species, looked at one another. Their faces showed not anger, but a deep, chilling understanding. The voices were not those of soldiers or monsters. They were office workers. They were technicians. They were bored. The woman named Hannah had said it so casually. The interesting ones are the ones that mean to trespass. Those we get to study. The curiosity asterisk had been an accident. A boring accident. It was housekeeping. It was a standard procedure handled with a sigh of boredom. The gentle lights, the soothing voice, the memory wipe. It was not a punishment. It was the simplest, most effortless tool in the box. A spray of disinfectant dot, and if this was the gentle way, what was the alternative? What did they do to the ones who were interesting? What did study mean? The galaxy finally grasped the full shape of its fear. It was not fear of invasion. Humanity showed no desire to leave its space. It was not fear of weapons. They had used none. It was the fear of being irrelevant. It was the fear of being a minor entry in a log file, discussed with boredom by people you would never see. It was the fear that, to humanity, the entire galactic Concorde with its treaties and its fleets and its cultures was not a neighbor. It was a potential source of contamination, to be managed with calm. Clinical Efficiency. Ambassador John was invited for one final clarification meeting. He sat, smiling his pleasant smile, as the lead counselor played the audio snippet. June listened, his head slightly tilted. When it finished, he nodded. An unfortunate security breach. It appears a low-level operational communication was intercepted. I will have to report this to our internal security. They will not be pleased. He said it as if scolding a clerk for a filing error. Ambassador, the counselor said, his voice weary. This gentle way? What is the other way? What do you do to the ones who are interesting? Chun's smile remained, but his eyes changed. They did not become hard or cruel. They became distant. They became like the void outside the curiosity's hull. Counselor, he said softly, some questions are like borders. Crossing them does not lead to answers. It only leads to a place where you are, processed. It is better to be boring. It is better to stay on your side of the line. He stood to leave. Humanity wishes only for peace. Our peace. Within our space. The rules are simple. They have always been simple. No species enters human space. It is not a threat. It is a fact of life. Like gravity. Please adjust your charts accordingly. He left the chamber. That day, the Concord High Council issued a new directive. It was sent to every member species, every military unit, every exploration guild, every private shipping company. It was short, and it was absolute. Asterisk, asterisk, Directive Alpha 1. No vessel, under any circumstances, is to approach within 1 light year of any designated human administrative zone. Any border crossing, accidental or intentional, will be considered a total loss of vessel and crew. No rescue attempts will be made. No diplomatic protests will be filed. Asterisk, asterisk. It was the most terrifying document the Concord had ever produced. It was a surrender to a force they did not understand. It was an admission that some lines, when crossed, led not to war, but to a silent, sterile room where you were cleaned up and forgotten. On the edge of human space, the stars twinkled quietly. No human ships patrolled the border. No weapons platforms were visible. There was only empty space, and a line on a map that everyone now understood was the edge of the universe. The fear had taken root. It was a clean, quiet, and very permanent kind of fear, and it kept the peace